The Department of Homeland Security's refusal to release the records of Prince Harry.
There is a book making the rounds right now that has done something very few royal biographies manage to do. It has gotten both camps talking at once. Royal watchers, who usually disagree with each other, are suddenly quoting the same passages. And the Sussex's own team has responded with language sharper than almost anything they've said publicly in years. So let's talk about what's actually in this book, what's been confirmed, what's been disputed, and why the timing of all of this matters. The book is called Betrayal, Power, Deceit, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family, written by veteran investigative author Tom Bower. Bower is not a new name in this space. He has built a decades-long career writing unauthorized biographies of powerful, often difficult subjects, and his method has always been the same. Track down people close to his subject, collect their accounts, and publish what he finds regardless of how uncomfortable it makes the people involved. He has described his own approach in blunt terms: find the people who feel they were wronged, and let them talk. That approach is exactly what's generating the current wave of headlines. The Times serialized excerpts from Betrayal, and almost immediately, the claims inside it started dominating royal coverage in a way that few Sussex-related stories have managed recently. So what does the book actually claim? Let's go through it piece by piece, because the specifics matter here more than the general vibe of outrage on either side. Perhaps the single most quoted line from the book is Bower's assertion that Queen Camilla told a friend that Meghan had, in Camilla's words, brainwashed Harry. It's an explosive claim precisely because of who it's attributed to. Camilla is not a tabloid source. She is the Queen Consort, someone who has largely stayed above the day-to-day sniping between the two branches of the family. If the quote is accurate, it tells you that private frustration with how the relationship unfolded reached even the most controlled corners of the palace. If it isn't accurate, and Buckingham Palace has, as a matter of policy, declined to comment on it because the institution does not typically respond to biographies, then it's an unverifiable second-hand claim doing an enormous amount of narrative work that Bower's book also revisits the idea that William and Kate viewed Meghan as a threat, or, in some retellings of his reporting, that she became what's been described as a divisive agent inside the household well before the Sussexes stepped back from royal duties in 2020. This isn't a new claim exactly. Versions of this tension have been reported in various forms since Finding Freedom and other books came out years ago. What's different is the specificity Bower brings and the timing, arriving right as the family's internal balance of power is shifting with King Charles's health situation an ongoing part of the public conversation. One of the more granular, harder to dismiss sections of the book concerns Centibale, the children's charity Harry co-founded years before he met Meghan. Bower goes back to some of charity's early financial troubles, specifically a period when a relatively small fraction of the money raised through high-profile fundraising events, including a concert held in memory of Princess Diana, actually reached the orphans and children the charity was meant to help. This is documented territory. Centibale's early operating issues have been covered before, separate from anything to do with Meghan. What makes it newly relevant is Bower connecting it to a broader dispute, the very public falling out last year between Harry and Centibale's board chair, Sophie Shandoka, which ended in her accusing him publicly of misogyny and racism, allegations Harry's team has firmly rejected. The Centibale Foundation itself pushed back hard on Bower's characterization, calling it commentary, driven by a long-established agenda, rather than genuine understanding of the charity's mission. The book also touches on the Invictus Games, the international sporting competition for wounded, injured, and sick service members that Harry founded in 2014, a project that is, by most accounts, the most universally respected part of his post-military life. Bower's excerpt suggested that the 2025 Games in Canada were, in his framing, overshadowed by the attention paid to the couple rather than the competitors. Representatives for Harry disputed this characterization directly, arguing it misunderstands the purpose of the Games and risks trivializing service members dealing with invisible injuries like PTSD. That's a meaningful pushback, and it's worth including here rather than skating past it, because it's one of the clearest points where Bower's framing and the lived reality of the event's participants appear to be in real tension. This is where Bauer's reporting overlaps most directly with things that are independently verifiable. It's a matter of public record that the couple's Spotify podcast deal ended without being renewed, and that Netflix's involvement with Meghan's lifestyle brand, as ever, did not continue in the way it initially launched. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, discussing the book publicly, summarized the couple's commercial position bluntly. They've lost Spotify, Netflix is no longer backing as ever, and Senabale itself has shrunk to the point of running at a financial loss as of 2024. None of that requires taking Bauer's word for it. Those are documented business outcomes. Where the book moves into more speculative territory is in translating some deals ended into sweeping claims about the couple's overall financial sustainability. That's a much bigger claim, and it deserves more scrutiny than a single biography can offer. Separately from anything in Bauer's book, there's real data suggesting the lifestyle brand has cooled off with American consumers. Newsweek's analysis of web traffic to the As Ever online store, using third-party analytics rather than official company figures, found a noticeable dip in visits over the first quarter of 2026, tracking alongside a broader decline in Meghan's favorability numbers among Americans over the same window. That's a useful, independently sourced data point, and it's worth noting precisely because it doesn't come from Bauer's book at all. It's an entirely separate line of reporting that happens to point in a similar direction. Now, let's talk about the response, because it's been unusually forceful. A spokesperson for the Sussexes didn't just deny individual claims. They went after Bauer's credibility as an author, accusing him of having long crossed the line from criticism into fixation, and in a later statement, describing his work as deranged conspiracy and melodrama. They also pointed to a past comment Bauer reportedly made suggesting the monarchy depends on what he called obliterating the Sussexes from public life, using his own words to argue that his research isn't neutral reporting, but a long-running campaign against them. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it cuts both ways. On one hand, consider the source is a completely fair response to any unauthorized biography built on anonymous friends of friends quotes that can't be independently verified. On the other hand, a blanket deranged conspiracy framing doesn't actually engage with the parts of the book that are grounded in verifiable business outcomes. The Spotify deal, the Netflix relationship, Senabale's finances. Dismissing the whole book as fabrication is just as much of an oversimplification as accepting every anonymous quote in it as gospel. So where does that leave us? Let's talk about the polling data, because this part is genuinely well documented and doesn't depend on trusting any single author. YouGov has been tracking royal family favorability for years using consistent methodology, and the trend for both Harry and Meghan has been unmistakably downward. As of early 2026, YouGov's UK tracker put Meghan's favorability at roughly 19 to 20%, with unfavorable views running as high as 66%, the lowest scores YouGov has recorded for her. Harry's numbers sit only slightly better, generally in the 30 to 31% favorable range, with 60% or more viewing him unfavorably. Compare that to Prince William and Catherine, who both sit in the 74 to 77% favorable range, and to King Charles, who polls around 60% positive despite navigating his own health challenges and a genuinely difficult few years for the institution. YouGov's coverage around the late Queen's would-be 100th birthday in April 2026 also confirmed that Elizabeth II remains, unsurprisingly, the most fondly remembered royal figure by a wide margin, with approval north of 80% even years after her death. It's worth noting that YouGov's American polling on Meghan tells a slightly different, more nuanced story than the UK numbers. Using their rolling ratings system, Meghan's net favorability among Americans stood at roughly +2 in early 2026, down sharply from about +15 just 2 quarters earlier, but still net positive, unlike her deeply negative UK numbers. That's an important distinction that often gets flattened in commentary. She is not equally unpopular everywhere. Her decline is steepest and most dramatic in Britain specifically. None of this polling data proves or disproves anything in Bauer's book. It simply tells you, independently of any single author's narrative, that public sentiment toward the Sussexes in the UK has been trending negative for a sustained period, that the trend accelerated further around their Australia trip earlier this year, and that American sentiment, while softer than it once was, hasn't collapsed the same way. That's a meaningfully different, more precise picture than the flattened, everyone hates them everywhere version of this story you'll see in a lot of commentary. So what should you actually take away from all of this? A few things, and they're worth holding separately rather than blending into one sweeping conclusion. First, Tom Bauer's book contains claims that range from independently verifiable, the end of the Spotify and Netflix relationships, Sendabale's documented financial troubles, to essentially unverifiable second-hand quotes attributed to royal family members who, by institutional custom, will never confirm or deny them. Treating all of it with the same level of confidence is a mistake in either direction. Second, the Sussexes' response has been notably more aggressive than their usual approach of simply not engaging with unauthorized biographies. That shift in strategy is itself newsworthy, regardless of which specific claims in the book turn out to hold up. Third, the polling numbers are real, they're consistent across multiple survey waves, and they represent genuine, sustained erosion in UK public opinion. But they are UK-specific in their severity, and the more measured American data is worth including if you want the full picture rather than the most dramatic possible framing. And finally, this book fits into a broader pattern that's been building for a while now. Unauthorized royal biographies, YouGov tracking data, and business reporting on the Sussexes' commercial ventures are all, in their own separate lanes, painting a picture of a couple whose post-royal commercial and reputational position has weakened considerably since 2020. Whether that trajectory continues, stabilizes, or reverses is genuinely an open question, and it's one that's going to keep generating headlines regardless of how this particular book controversy settles. What's your take? Do you think Bauer's book adds anything genuinely new to the record? Or is this just the latest round of an argument that's been running since 2020? Drop your thoughts. And if you want a deeper breakdown of any one thread here, the Sendabale dispute, the Invictus Games controversy, or the polling data specifically, let me know and I'll dig into it further.